Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good afternoon. We are delighted to have you here this year at the industry conference presented by Christie Digital at the 50th Toronto International Film Festival presented by Rogers. And I know it's already it's day one, day two, day three, but listen, I'm gonna ask you guys to still give a round of applause for TIFF turning 50. My name is Renee Robinson, and I am TIFF's consultant for market strategy. If any of you have not had a chance as yet, please do check out our market showroom for the big market that we're launching next year, 2026. It's over at Adelaide and Widmer, and it is open in the afternoons with your delegate badge, so please do check it out. But for today, why we're here, it is my pleasure to introduce this session, Perspectives, Sourcing Stories in a Multi-Platform World. From journalistic podcasts to immersive games and online communities, we're at a tipping point for how new forms of IP are transforming the screen industries. We all know it, right? In this session, we'll be exploring the unconventional origins of some of today's most talked about projects and the forward thinking that it takes to bring them to screen. Our programming is made possible by the support of all of our sponsors and partners. We couldn't be doing this without you. So sincere thank you to our presenting sponsor, Rogers, our major sponsors, RBC and Visa, our major industry supporters, Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada, and our media partner, Screen International, for supporting the Perspectives program. Joining us for this conversation, I'm about to bring them out on stage, is Justin McGoldrick, the founder and principal of Sound Picture, Adam Levine, founding partner at Verve, and guiding through this session is Aron Levitz, the president of Wattpad. Please join me in welcoming Adam, Justin, and Aron to the stage. Round of applause.
Don't fight over seats. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session where we're going to talk about new places to find IP in this world. There used to be basically two ways you found IP as a producer, right? Your barista passed you a script, or you looked at the New York Times bestseller list and said, who am I fighting with for those 10 books? World has changed. There's an infinite number of platforms with huge creators being created. There's new audiences being created every day, new fandoms being created every day. And these two fine humans next to me know a lot about how we source and look for IP. I will say there was a third panelist who could not make it, so I'm also the third panelist. So if I'm asking myself questions, it's not just ego, it's because we need to keep the conversation going. So to start off, just by introduction, I am Aron Levitz. I am president of a platform called Wattpad, which is the world's largest social network for readers and writers where people can come, tell their story, sometimes get 10,000 reads, 100,000 reads, 1 billion reads of their story, and see their stories go to screens, projects like After, Retrofest Doom Antenna, Sidelined on Tubi, or become best-selling books all over the world. So I will bring a little bit of that. Justin, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
First of all, I thought you were reading from a teleprompter, but I'm seeing that it's actually just getting transcribed. So should just be careful about what we say, since it's getting put into writing. My name's Justin. I'm a TV and film producer, an independent TV and film producer. I run a company called Sound Picture, which looks for audio IP. I used to say podcasts, but podcasts are now video, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But it's mostly audio stories or music catalogs that feel like they may have an opportunity for adaptation in TV and film. Before that, I was at Spotify for several years, overseeing their slate of podcasts, TV and film projects. We shot a project here in Toronto called The Horror of Dolores Roach, which was a Blumhouse Amazon series a couple years ago. And then before that, I worked, in companies big and small at Illumination on Super Mario Brothers and the Minions movies, and for Ivan Reitman at the Montecito Picture Company when he was rebooting Ghostbusters about a decade ago.
Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Levine. You may know me from Maroon 5, but if... Fuck that guy. So I originally born and raised in Montreal, made my way out to Hollywood in the late 90s. I started at a company called Endeavor, which ended up becoming William Morris Endeavor, which is one of the largest talent agencies in the world. And then decided to go rogue and start our own agency called Verve. And so it's been 16 years now, and much like everybody here, I think we're all looking for the same thing, right? Which is how to find great stories to bring to life in any capacity. So looking forward to talking about it.
Thank you. And now, show of hands, who thought they were coming to see the other Adam Levine? Right, okay, perfect. Very few people are disappointed. That's a good way to start. Okay, so let's start with, just talk about the definition of IP. Like, how has that changed over the last 3 years, 10 years, 20 years? You've both seen kind of the most traditional form and where we are today. So how, when you think about IP, has that really changed?
Yeah, I mean, IP means intellectual property. It's really the building blocks to, it can be a building block to a story. So, you know, it may be a short story, could be short film. You know, where I focus a lot is on podcasts. But then you can get more creative with it as well, and that's what you've seen, you know, especially in the last few years, is people just thinking more outside the box about where a story can originate and what you can use to, you know, just start the engine on a project beyond just an original script. So, you know, it could be a TikTok series, or it could be short stories. Yeah, I mean, in the last few years, it's just, I think people have sort of opened their eyes to different, more creative ways to think about IP.
Yeah, I think, you know, years ago, traditional IP, right, was books and novels, or, you know, could be graphic novels, could be comic books, could be anything that was sort of derived that people, you know, had rights to, and then could be paid for those rights. And I think now it's sort of morphed into almost anything, and almost anything can sort of be IP depending on how you present it to the market. And so I think we're gonna talk a little bit more about that today, of all the different ways that we can, I hate to use the word manipulate the word IP, but I'm gonna say the words manipulate the word IP.
Exploit is maybe...
Fair enough.
Only in Hollywood do
Same
we talk between exploit and manipulate as which is better, if you take nothing else away. Yeah, I mean, when we think about IP now, to me, IP is defined by fandom. Like, is there a fandom of that thing? Is it a news article? Is it a streamer? Is it a video game? Is it a Roblox world? Like, fandom now defines what IP is versus the old school, which was you found something that you were adapting to create a bigger fandom. So, that is kind of the essence of how we think about things at Wattpad in general, is look for a fandom, and that will point you towards the IP. You know, sometimes we get lucky. We talked about K-pop Demon Hunters. We've all watched, right? Okay, good. You know, watching that fandom explode in real time is a phenomenal thing to be able to experience. So we have IP in all corners of the interwebs in real life. What are the new challenges that come out when you're sourcing IP from non-traditional sources?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because how you even define IP feels like it's evolving a lot, as you're saying. And you know, a movie like F1, the movie, is framed as an original movie, but by the definition of fandom really is, you know, the IP is F1, the movie's literally called F1, the movie. And so there's things that are on such a grand scale that are no-brainers. And, you know, during the TV boom, you did see maybe it didn't necessarily need to have fandom, it could just be IP, and that was sort of enough to get buyers to buy into the concept. And now it feels like the bar is just so much higher to get people, buyers specifically, excited about what the project is. It's much more competitive landscape. Everyone is finding, you know, looking for their way to harvest IP. And so, you know, you hear a place like Netflix basically say, you know, for documentaries, and you could kind of frame celebrities that they make documentaries about as IP. the floor for them for a celebrity sports documentary is David Beckham. Like, that's as least famous as they're willing to get on a documentary project. And it just goes, I think in the last couple of years, you just see how much more challenging it is for everyone, sort of all corners of TV and film, but especially for those looking to extract the value from IP, that it's just a very high bar right now.
How about yourself, Adam? Where are you seeing the new opportunity? What are the new difficulties, challenges that you see today?
So the way that I look at these things is, and obviously I'm an agent, right? So it's all about framing whatever the thing is to the buyers, right? And how you want it to be perceived. IP alone, right, is not getting it done anymore just for the sake that it is and it exists. It helps, right, to sort of grease the wheels, to sort of get in there. What I find now, which has been the biggest challenge, is finding the new way into the IP so that it differentiates it from what it was. So, for example, we have a client whose family has the rights to Annie, okay? We all love Annie. But the last movie that came out a number of years ago maybe wasn't as successful, and it devalued the brand. And so what we have been talking about is a way to rebrand this, but figuring out a way to do it so that it brings new life to whatever the thing is. And that is sort of traditional, right? It already exists. But if I just went out to the buyers and said, I have Annie, maybe somebody would buy it, but am I extracting the value of what I think I could extract if I sort of presented it in a very different way? And so part of my job is taking, whether it be the existing IP or the perceived IP, which we'll get into in a minute, and finding the way to build enough of the demand for it that goes beyond just it exists, it has some level of fandom.
So actually, just to pull from what you said, Justin, is there a way, like when you find that gem of a audio IP, is that what we're saying? Did I say that right?
Audio IP.
Don't judge. Is there a way that you do frame it? Because Annie is a great example, right? You do have to find a new way to tell Annie. It's been told a million times, and a million times really well. So how do you tell it a different way? How about when you're finding something brand new? Is there a way you try to frame it very specifically when you pitch it, or is everything a snowflake?
I mean, I've made the mistake before of maybe pursuing things that felt like it's what the marketplace is asking for rather than necessarily what I am personally passionate about. So first step is always, as a producer, knowing that even if things go well, you could be trying to get it off the ground for several years. So I have an index card next to my desk that just says, like, do you want to spend the next 5 years on this? And if the answer is yes, then it's something that I'm going to explore. And if you are an IP owner, if you own some, if you've written a short story or if you're talking to producers, you want to make sure that it's people who are going to keep pushing that boulder up the mountain year over year to try and get, to try and deliver on the potential of what the adaptation could be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just like, do I feel confident that I can find the not just the right creative elements to make this a sellable project, but that they're the right, writer, director, actor that can actually get something sold right now. And every buyer is going to have a different set of who they think is valuable, and so playing that sort of arithmetic of figuring out how do I best sort of buttress the IP with the right people and the most valuable people that actually gets us closer to getting something sold and made.
Cool. One thing I find that's changed a lot with a difficulty, challenge, actually power when you're looking for IP in new places is IP owners used to be book publishers, or they would have an agent. Now they don't. Like, you find a writer on a Wattpad, a streamer on Twitch, they've amassed massive audience, which is a massive amount of fandom, massive amount of power, and they didn't have anyone's help. So when you start to introduce them to the traditional industry, they're like, well, yeah, you can't make that decision if we do X, Y, or Z, depending on what country you're here from. they don't get that. And why should they, right? Why does Mr. Beast need to listen to Hollywood that you have to create a game show this way? He's like, no, I don't. I've been doing this by myself and making millions. I'm gonna do it my way. Or I amassed 10,000 readers without anyone's help. That's more readers than anything on the New York Times bestseller has this week. So I think that shift in power, and we talked about a little in the green room, which means the traditional paths of, you know, maybe publish something, go to Hollywood doesn't have to happen. Maybe they should sell t-shirts first. And they're gonna wanna have a lot of say in how things will happen. So as you're working with creators, especially like very pure creator economy types, you as a producer really have to teach them a lot because they got powerful without any knowledge of the industry. You know, that barista who moved out to LA to pass you a script, like they kind of get how the industry works. You work with a young woman who wrote a massive story but she lives in Venezuela. You're doing a lot more hand-holding, and the balance of power has really shifted. It's a big difference I've seen over the last few years.
How does Wattpad sort of identify the projects that you as a studio or financier sort of want to adapt?
First of all, thank you for asking me a question. Way less awkward. Yeah. Love that for us. Love that for us. And I think you both alluded to this, like it is art and science, right? You talked about having to be passionate about something because like nothing gets made in a year. Like this isn't like, okay, it's December 30th, I guess that project's done, we'll move on to the next one. So obviously the story has to be meaningful. There has to be a reason the story was written. There has to be something unique about it. That's the art. You know, that's just what we all do because we all love storytelling. That's why we're all in this room to some degree. But the other side is the ones and zeros. Is this growing quickly? Is it part of a macro trend that we see? Is it growing faster than the biggest thing on Wattpad? So we have a phenomenal access to data that helps us understand why something is relevant today. So we might look at something that's huge and go like, okay, well, there's something that exists like that. It just came out. We're not gonna be able to sell this as a movie for a year because there was already something on Netflix like this. So we'll start in a different path with it because we know that's closed to us. So that's really how we look at it. We have to look at what's unique about this storytelling, and then why does the audience love it through the ones and zeros? And it's kind of something we can uniquely do because we are both the producer and the platform. So thank you for that excellent question, Justin.
More to come.
Where are you looking? Like where are your go-to places to look for IP these days? If it's still Starbucks, let me know. But where are you searching? Like where are the new places and the more tried and true places you keep going?
So being at an agency, we have access, right, to a lot of things that are both incoming, right, whether it be from producers, other executives all around the world, and we have to sort of decipher between, is this valuable IP or not? So that's part A, right? And we kind of sift through that, right, which is fine. So we have a number of creators and people that come out of Marvel and have huge titles, or aforementioned Annie, or clients who are screenwriters whose parents may have written a movie that have now sort of kind of come back to them, right? So for fun, I'm in the middle of figuring out, alongside of Warner Brothers, how to redo Dirty Harry, right? Because that was one that sort of came back, and I'm really excited about that. But for the purpose of this conversation, I'm gonna leave that aside. One of the things that we've been doing is, and to understand a little bit of Hollywood is to understand the difference between what I call home chefs and professional chefs, right? Anyone can have a great idea. Anyone in the world can have a great idea. That's fine. That doesn't mean you're gonna make it in Hollywood. That doesn't mean you're gonna make it turn into something incredible. It's about the execution of it, right? And Hollywood is professional execution people. Debatable, but you understand what I'm saying. So for us, I love a great idea. And my job is to, alongside of yours, right? Because agents, producers, we all sort of do a little bit of the same thing, just with a different slant. My job is to sort of figure out, hey, if that's a great idea, how do I match you up with someone who could actually execute that great idea? And then take that great idea and make it even more valuable and whatnot. And so, couple of years ago, we started with a phenomenon, and I tip my hat to a couple of my colleagues who sort of worked on this endeavor with me, which is we found a short story on a Reddit site called No Sleep. And it was an incredible short story that we got tipped off to because one of our screenwriters, his brother, wrote the short story. And it was incredible. And we read it, and it was amazing. And we thought, wow, that could actually turn into something legit. And so we were able to figure it out, talk obviously to the brother into giving us the opportunity to kind of go put it together. Took it out to market. We had a number of different suitors, and big A-list stars were circling it and whatnot, right? And we were able to then, and thank God, because the deal that they had with Reddit didn't own anything. So we were actually able to make a deal with a big streamer. We held back publishing rights. And then from there, we were able to then not only sell the short story and got major six figures for it, and we actually sold it, we didn't option it. We got the writer's brother to adapt the screenplay. We also then got the brother to become an actual publishing person. He actually wrote it. We sold it to a big publishing house, and it's coming out shortly. So just an example of that then started a run of like, I think we've done now 30 of these type of short stories, whether we found them on Reddit or now, it doesn't even need to be on Reddit. People are just sending us short stories. Screenwriters are now taking their ideas, and instead of in the old days just going out and pitching, the art of pitching, which is great, pitching is a little dead right now in Hollywood. It's very, very hard. Everyone's like, oh, it's execution, right? So they're writing short stories or little novellas now, whether it's actually tied to something or not, doesn't really matter. And we've been able to then, again, frame it in the right way, go out to market, put it together with the right elements, and then sell it at a multiple. And it's been very lucrative to see this way of doing things. And one of the reasons, I'm sorry, I'm taking so long. I had coffee. Okay, so one of the reasons why this is becoming successful, and if you think about it, try to get Steven Spielberg or Scarlett Johansson or Ryan Reynolds or whoever it is you think of as a major star to read a full-length screenplay that isn't set up, that doesn't have anything, that isn't whatever. Now, give them 30 pages. It gets read a lot quicker. And usually the 30 pages, just like a great trailer, will have a great hook to it, will have something that draws you in, and then they can see what it can be. And a lot of the times, it hooks people in and then gets them leaning in a little bit more, which then you're able to then say, okay, now how do we fulfill the promise of where this started? And that either could be because there's a screenwriter attached, it could be because there's another director attached, whatever it may be, but they lean in a lot more heavily on the promise of what it could be rather than actually having to determine what's already there. And that's been super, super impactful. And we've been able to sell a number of these. In fact, we just started, so we helped this company that started doing this. It's called 1201 Films. We just helped start that company. We've actually made an imprint deal already because we've held back all publishing rights to a lot of these short stories. Now they're all turning into books. Some may become a book before it becomes a movie. Some may become a movie before it becomes a book or a TV series or whatever it may be. And now we're starting to hold back other areas, which we can talk about later, of like, how do you then extract more value from one piece of IP as opposed to selling all rights to someone and just only participating in that one revenue stream?
That's great. That covered like 9 of my other questions, so I got to rewrite them all, but it's fine. We'll do this. So, but it actually brings up something interesting because that was really like usable information for everyone trying to do this. In an audio story, how are you getting people to understand what can be 20 hours of storytelling? Or if it's more unscripted, like you don't understand the characters that are telling you the story until you've listened to 20 episodes. Like, how do you get that across?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a project that I'm developing with 2 incredible writers right now, and the podcast itself has 215 episodes. It's a fiction narrative podcast, and the creator releases a new episode every week. So when we started working on it, it was at like 198, and now we're already at episode 216 or something. And they basically, you're never going to get a buyer to listen to you may not even get a buyer to listen to one episode of something. And so I usually recommend that they just listen to the first episode to get a sense of the tone, but to just listen to the writer's pitch and let them tell you what the actual story is going to look and feel like, or the actual film is going to look and feel like. What I love about the short story approach that you have is that for a while there was, you could call it a fad of people making fiction podcasts specifically so that they could get optioned and made for TV and film. And that is a little bit of a fool's errand in some cases, just because it's a lot more expensive and a lot more work than you think to make a fiction podcast. And it gets a little too close to the final product. You're no longer selling people on what the promise of the adaptation is going to be. It's almost this uncanny valley of like, okay, so there's an actor performing the lines, and so if that actor isn't that great at acting, then suddenly you're sort of turned off by the whole thing. But if you were just reading that story as a short story, I would certainly recommend that if you were ever looking to kind of follow this linear path of making a fiction podcast so that you can make a movie or TV show based on it. I would just say write the short story version of it instead. You're going to get people to check it out a lot faster, and you're going to be done with it a lot quicker too. But I think a lot of it also comes down to just like, why are you doing this in the first place? And for a short story to be on No Sleep, that was a story engineered for the audience of Reddit. That it was like a sincere endeavor to just meet the audience where it is, and where it can sometimes just get a little bit tricky, and sometimes, as I suspect as a buyer you can sort of sniff it out, that sometimes people are just making IP so that it's IP, and that it sometimes works, but often I think just you want to make something for the medium that it's being delivered in first, and if it's excellent, then people will be drawn to it more likely than you just making something so that it can be turned into something else later.
So I want to get to the audience part of that in a second, but it's interesting the takeaways, like if you are going to go and try to touch the traditional industry at all, you have to end with an artifact that industry understands. So whether it is a short story, getting people to listen to 215 episodes? Yeah.
216.
16, sorry. One was released during this discussion. Okay, good. But look, when I went to Hollywood the first time with Wattpad, I showed up with a spreadsheet and some links and this is how many reads this has, and let me tell you how badly that went. So it is interesting, like, no matter how much you can source something from other places, knowing your ultimate audience who's gonna buy that from you means there are specific artifacts we all have to figure out I'm sure all three of us on stage have figured out over time, which is why when you are working with those creators who did, your Reddit short story, explain to them, this is how it could work is a big part of the job. Let's talk about audience. So you find something on Reddit or you find an audio story. How much do you consider moving the original audience with you to the new medium? Like, are you worried about the short story, people who love that short story on Reddit coming to watch the movie? Same thing, do you want those podcast people to come, or are you looking for brand new audiences as you adapt this thing?
You go.
Don't fight, Chuck.
Okay, so again, depending on the slant, right, that we're looking at, right? So for me, my job is to find whatever the client is looking for and how to sort of bring that to whatever market and whatever matters to the client, right? It could be money, it could be visibility, it could be whatever, right? And so we sort of design a plan. If I see something that I think can translate from one medium to another, a lot of it is, and some creators in the anime world and other worlds, right, they don't want to touch anything because their original area of expertise is doing so well that they do not want to have anything to disrupt that, right? So we work with a lot of, whether it be Japanese creators or Asian-based creators, and a lot of them don't want to disrupt what they already have going on. So it's very, very hard to then get rights to then exploit them in other areas because, as you said earlier, it's already working. on the flip side, there are many people who are looking to take advantage and be able to exploit in so it all depends on who the client is and what they're looking for. But those that want to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, want to create a larger fandom, if you will, in multiple areas, the way that they're going to look at it is, what is the best thing for this original thing that I could then go exploit and then go figure out a way to make money on? And at the end of the day, great art brings great money. So if you find the right platform to kind of go do whatever it may be, and you're doing it well, again, that will explode this original thing and make it that much more valuable. And I think that that's part of our respective jobs, is to kind of know and design the path with the rights holder to figure out what is that best path. I'll give you a perfect case in point. We are in the middle right now of a 7-studio bidding war for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which we have the rights to, okay? And the original rights holders don't necessarily need money. And I'm not going to say who's going to win this auction, but there is a big discrepancy between one studio who made an offer for all rights at a major multiple, right? And then there's another path that allows for a little bit more control, a lot more upside and success, and a lot more creative input. And the rights holders are likely going to choose that path. And again, I love money. I really love money. You have no idea how much I love money. That being said, that may not be the path of the clients or the rights holders in this case. And our job is to design the best path that allows them to kind of go do whatever that they may want to go do. And in this case, it may not be upfront money. The hope will be that the overall endeavor will be so great that the back end money will crush whatever the upfront money is. And so that's our job. Our job is to advise the best path.
Just to follow up on that, do you like money? Too easy? Look at this.
You have extra money?
There's no such thing.
Justin, for you, like when you think about, when you're grabbing that podcast, that audio story, which I'm going to keep screwing up, audio IP, I'll get it right eventually by the end of this. How do you think about that original audience? Like where does that sit in as you're adapting, developing, et cetera?
I mean, it can really work in your favor if you're pitching a project that's based on a piece of IP that has a built-in audience, that the executive you're pitching to can then take it to their boss and say, no, this is proven in the marketplace. There are people that are going to show up to see this because they've shown up in this other form already, and they're devoted. They have Reddit threads with Reddit theories, and there's YouTube, reviews of the thing. Like, all of that can be extremely valuable, and depending on what that thing is, once you're actually developing with the studio, it's always I like to work closely with the rights holders. I don't want to just pluck them, take their thing and run with it and not incorporate them into the creative process, because there's going to be things that they know about their audience that you just won't have a pulse on necessarily. And, there's one podcast I mentioned that has 216 episodes. We had a character, the writers made a character choice that he had only one note, and the whole pitch that the writers kind of took to him for his sign off or blessing, and it's something that he knew the audience just wasn't going to sit right with them, and so you don't want to do anything to alienate the audience, but also you need to make something like we were saying, that's best for the form that it's going to be in. So. Every project's different. You're always going to find a balance. How do you incorporate audience?
So I wouldn't even know how to develop something without audience being involved, because it's just what we've done since day one. Audiences are usually fairly forgiving. They get that a short story on Reddit is not the same as a 10-episode season 1 of something. They understand that the book is edited and the story on Wattpad was written 1 million words on a cell phone while sitting on a bus. So they know there's going to be differences. Hollywood, or I won't just say Hollywood, we've produced all over the world. Like, the traditional industry all over the world has generally been pretty scared of fandom. They've been pretty scared of audience. Why? Because, well, if an audience says yes or no too early, we like this, have we just wasted all this time in development? what we try to do is bring the audience in as soon as possible, because you will find that tertiary character that, you know, a writer's room would have no idea if that's important. We had to almost shut down a full day of shooting on a film because the costume department brought a dress that was green instead of maroon. And one of the big things in the book is this maroon dress, which shows up in one line in one chapter. They would have no idea. So paying homage to like the Easter eggs, the winks, the nods are really important. But intrinsically, those fans have studied this. They're like anthropologists of whatever you're producing. Why wouldn't you want to listen to them? Like, the first time I read something is when it's already been read 10 million times. Like, how would I know better than a million people who fall in love with this thing already? So I think one of the superpowers that we lean in on is fandom. We have sent like pilot scripts to super fans to get their take on them. They get all the same notes that the studio execs do, plus 30% they would never figure out. Like, if you do this, you're gonna have a real problem in season 3. Like, okay, cool, and they're right. So you have to lean into it. It's scary because you may find out you've gone down the wrong path, but it's way better to do that in development than when, you know, 150 people are sitting in a theater watching your thing. So let's talk about the multi-direction that you can take with creators and like the business deals that we now have to do. Traditionally, you would option a book or buy a book and go make a book into a movie. How about now? Like, when you are finding these pieces, you know, you kind of alluded to it already, but how are you making these deals? How are you thinking about what direction IP has to go in first? Is there a tried and true method already, or are we still kind of figuring this out as we go? Justin, why don't you start?
Sure. Well, you know, as a producer, I'm working, as Adam mentioned, working closely with agents, but you know, ultimately sort of deferring to them on how best to navigate a lot of these questions. I can speak to the podcasting space, where it's evolved a lot in the last couple of years. You used to think of podcasts in the spirit of This American Life or, you know, Radio Lab, where it was these limited run, very thoughtful, creative, elevated, you know, narratives, either nonfiction or fiction. And now when you hear podcasts, you're imagining a video always on talk format driven by, you know, a comedian or celebrity. And the way that that has changed for the podcast landscape is that before, there used to be this kind of linear attitude towards podcast. You make the podcast, there's a great story that's told, you can exploit it in TV and film, great. But now you see most podcasters thinking about IP, and this goes for all rights holders, but, you know, podcasting is just one example of it, where they're really thinking about the 360 flywheel, where TV and film is just one spoke, but then you have merchandising, then you have live touring, you have ad sales, and you're looking to create a whole business that you can exploit in sort of all degrees, as opposed to just, you know, one lane. And that can be really exciting if you're an independent creator who is building an audience of your own online, and it makes you a little less susceptible to you know, the currents of, you know, the tide, basically, of like where the TV and film world is at any given moment. So that I think can be a really empowering thing, the idea that you are able to build that audience on your own. But obviously, you know, the challenges can be that, well, you may need a little more capital to go and do it by yourself, and where are you finding, you know, the resources to do that? And that's sort of, you know, then you get into brand sponsorships and things like that, which I'm also super fascinated by and excited about. But you know, it feels like while TV and film is still kind of recovering, there's all of these other things in the digital landscape that are really exciting, that are, you know, worth exploring at the same time.
Adam, first of all, I could say you definitely worked at Spotify at some point, because you use the term flywheel, which is what tech people say. You all just got tech people. Sorry about that. Adam, for yourself, you sit in the middle of all these business deals. How are you thinking traditionally? Are you mixing it up? How's it going?
So, again, depending on what the thing is, right? So you start with the thing, and then you got to figure out, okay, what is the best thing for this? Is it TV? Is it film? And then you got to break it down even further. If it's not TV or film or something else, fine. But if it is TV or film, what studio? Which producers? How do I we're not in the, did I mention I like money? So we're not just in the business of setting something up, because that's fees, nice, not that nice, but nice. How do you get something made, right? The objective here is not just to sell something. The objective is to actually get something made. So part of the decision tree that we all sort of go through is who's the best partner for this, both creatively on the one hand, but also is there enough real estate, right? You're not going to sell something to NBC if they only have one slot open that given year to get a new show on the air, right? That doesn't make sense, whereas a Netflix or somebody else might have a lot more real estate, right? So you're really looking at it from the standpoint of every which way, where is the best thing for it? Then you sort of figure out what the deal could look like, right? Depending, again, on the leverage that you may have. So my job, or our job, is to figure out how best to frame that house. It's not just about selling the house. How do you frame it? What's the best way to do that? How do I make it even more valuable? Because that gives me the leverage to then say to Netflix, well, or whoever, not only do you have to buy this today, not only do you have to develop this in this way, but if you don't, I get it back within X amount of time. Or if you don't make it within X amount of time, you have to pay this gigantic penalty, or whatever it may be. And you're really using as much of that leverage as you possibly can to help get the thing made wherever it might be. And so what we do is we sit there and we kind of look at whatever the thing is and then figure out what the best path is. Now, did I mention I like money? So not only are you trying to make money in the specific field that you're talking about, but as we just talked about, there's so many flywheel, so many other things that you can actually now derive from the thing. And you can, as I mentioned before, you can hold back publishing rights if you can, and therefore there's another avenue. There's live. How many things right now are we talking about that would make sense for an experience, right? We all were cooped up for however many years we were cooped up. Thank God we're starting to go back to the theaters again, but we all want to have a communal experience out there. And if there was a property, could be Vegas, could be anywhere, right, where you can actually go and experience something live, how exciting is that? And if you had, as a creator, a piece of that, that would be incredible. Merchandising, very hard to get traditionally. In the old days, you sell something, you're not getting anything as a creator. Nowadays, it's changing. So whenever we go out with whatever the thing is, we sort of kind of build a little bit of a plan of like, okay, now if this goes right, here's where we're going, here's what we're asking for, and we sort of toggle from there. But the idea is to maintain as much control, whether it be creative, financial, whatever it may be, for the creator or the rights holder, so that they can participate in every which stream, where in the past they were not really all that likely to do so.
Thanks, Adam. I mean, just to pull the final thread there, is like getting things made is the goal, right? A lot of, especially when you're a first-time producer, you're like, oh, I got the headline, we optioned a thing, and good luck making a living off option fees. So it really is thinking about the best way to get to the money as soon as possible. And in the new world of IP, creators can get there in almost instantly, where before it needed 400 gatekeepers to get them there. So on that note, we are going to throw it to these lovely people in the audience to ask us very kind softball questions. Oh no, someone already has their hand up. We don't have a microphone, so you're gonna have to yell and I will yell back. Okay, down here, because you just put your hand up so fast, I need to know what this is.
Thank you for your insights, really appreciate it. So for quote-unquote newbies like myself, I've got a dark comedy series about the first male phone sex operator, kind of edgy, different, not graphic. How do we get in front of people like you, Adam, and other agencies when so many of them have unsolicited submissions not accepted? Would love some insight.
So just to repeat the question so everyone can hear it, how, if you have new IP, if you're new to the game, how do you get that in front of the other Adam?
I mean, this question is as age-old as it comes, right? So let me first start by saying, yes, most of the agencies in Hollywood won't accept anything unsolicited. It's got to come from somebody that we know, right? So for $100 afterwards, I will give you Aron Levitz's email, and you can get it to him, and then
Aron at Wattpad.com. Go ahead. It won't
Okay.
be much for you, but
no, still the 100 comes here. Okay, so the thing is, right? The question that everyone's sitting here and asking is, how do I get the thing that I'm most passionate about out there to be seen? Right? We're all asking the same question. How does that happen? How do I, from wherever I'm from, get this to be seen? That's the thing. How do you figure that out, right? And we used to talk about Hollywood being a meritocracy, right? Where only the best no, bullshit. Okay? How do you get to be seen? Nowadays, there's so many avenues. Could be the short story on Reddit. Could be, you create your own audio, whatever it may be. There's this thing out there now that I'm sure a lot of people, are doing it, right? You guys hear about microdramas, right? These little minute, right? Like those are, again, however which way that you could figure out for it to get seen or somehow in the hands of somebody who knows somebody, right? That's the job that you have to sort of do and figure that out from there. Because otherwise, like I said earlier, right? Imagine how many home cooks there are in the world. It's hard, right? We care about the professional cooks. Now, perfect case in point. There was a short story that we sold to Universal that was written, and it was an exceptionally well-written short story. And the writer said, I don't need to adapt it, like, go ahead, just go sell it, whatever. And we got it in the hands of a major producer and a pretty big director named Steven Spielberg, and he read it and loved it, and then said to the producer, who happened to be a big writer, would you write this? And the writer was like, I can't, I'm too busy. And then Steven said, well, why don't we get the short story writer to write it? It's so well written. And that was amazing, changed his life, right? Changed his life. And he got an opportunity to write 2 drafts, took it most of the way there, not all the way there, which is perfectly fine in our world, right? Like, don't get me wrong, right? If you're a starting pitcher and you can go 7 innings, that's a good start, right? So that's the way we looked at it, and that happened, and now that's changed his life, and here we go, okay? So you never know how it can happen, but your job is to figure out how to get it in the hands of somebody or make somebody like us sort of take notice. And there's so many different ways of doing that.
Thank you, Adam. I'll go to the back this time. Okay, there's someone way the furthest back on the aisle. That's you. Yeah, looking behind you. You're it. All right. No, there's someone behind you. You didn't look back. Haha. You can be next.
Of course they do.
And my question is, how do you deal with that, and is that changing? Because risk is changing when it comes to TV, there's like this kind of post-production. Is that changing if you also notice in these kind of rights that, like all squeeze of rights?
So just to repeat the question, as you are taking a piece of IP out, the big houses all want everything, Netflix wants everything, Apple wants everything. How do you keep the things how do you keep as much of the rights to yourself without giving up control?
You get a good agent like Adam.
Yeah, that helps.
Do you want to talk about this? I mean, you do this
Yeah,
all day long.
I mean, so you know what one of the biggest things is knowing who your opponent is. Trying to hold merchandising back from Disney is very different than trying to hold merchandising back from Netflix. Showing you actually have a plan is really important. Because if you just say no, they'll like, okay, well, I'm going to go license something that I can get merchandising rights for. But if you go, but I have a plan, and here's, we're going to put it out on these sites, and this is how I'm driving audience to, and we're going to make money, and we'll give you a cut because we're doing this immediately, and you won't do it until maybe one day you make this thing 10 years from now. Okay, they might be open to that. So just praying that they give it to you is way different than actually having a plan and how you're going to exploit something. It does make a big difference in deal making.
Also leverage, and if you have multiple people, multiple parties who are interested in the project, you could potentially use the leverage of one party's interest to get better terms with the other.
All right. You'll go next. I'm going to go to this side of the room because I feel like I'm about right in the middle. Yes, you. Sorry, I know you. I'm saying things and you have no idea what I'm talking about.
So thank you so much for speaking. My question is about self-published IP. So does that get floated as much as traditional, or is it like no bullshit? Is it not considered at all? Because I know it's hard to define.
Colleen Hoover would say it does very well. So would Hugh Howey, and because I'll take this one because we do. Yeah. So look, I think both the traditional publishing industry and the movie industry knows to look at the top of Kindle Unlimited now. Like the secret is out on what drives self-published stuff. The important part is, do you have an audience? It's not easier to self-publish than traditionally publish and get a deal. It might be harder because everyone could be a writer. Like everyone in this audience could publish something on Wattpad today or Kindle today or whatever. So, but it is now very much looked at by producers, by Hollywood. The one thing that I do think has changed dramatically since I started, using ones and zeros to help get stories pushed along in Hollywood is they do have an appreciation for audience now. Fandom is part of the decision making. And so if you can self-publish and grow your own audience and monetize while you're doing that along the way, it is actually a very viable path right now.
That's on your own. However, now attach Reese Witherspoon to your thing, and here we go, right? Right, and at least that it's going to get it going. It may not get it all the way home, right? That's going to depend on how it ultimately gets developed from there, whatever it is. But so we all have to make that assessment between, is it valuable versus on its own, or does it need to have the thing to augment right, and to grease the wheels at the buyers?
All right, last question to my friend in, I believe, green. Question, which I realized I didn't repeat the last question, sorry, is as you're packaging something up, is there a direction you go first? You go to acting talent first, you go to director, straight to the money. How do you think about packaging directionally?
When I'm finding, a podcast or, now sort of branching out into other areas too, I'll always find, a writer first. That's not going to be the case for every project for everyone, but that's typically where I start because I'm not starting with a script, and then building it out from there. And I may bring on, bigger, more sort of, the Reese Witherspoons of the world that just add more producerial muscle to the package. And I could, work with them, use their sort of relationships to bring on a filmmaker or actor, or use my own. But usually I'll start with a writer who can develop a take on it, and then, they will either spec a script or, we'll kind of figure that out.
I'll just say, it depends again on what it is and what we're starting with, right? Again, our job is to figure out the best way to sort of take it to market. So it's very hard to sort of answer that question in one, it's not one size fits all. It could be anything. And if it was A plus B equals C all day long, oh my God, my job would be amazing. But it's not, right? It's constantly an art, not necessarily fully science of how and what and who and, how things sort of go. So I'll just say this in leaving, right? Which is, there are so many avenues now more than ever, right, to get your thing seen, whatever that may be. Whether we've taken things where it could be anybody who puts themselves on YouTube, right, and then we've taken that and then sold that, right, and used that as rights to kind of go do that. Could be short stories, could be whatever it may be. Could be with the use of, I'm going to say something controversial, right, with the use of AI, go create your own trailer, go create your own something. You guys, you have all the tools available now to make whatever it is the thing is to at least be seen. Even if you have a 500-page novel, whether you self-publish or not, you could take a little snippet of it, right? Because remember, everyone in Hollywood has ADD. So remember, take a little bit snippet of it, make it appetizing so that we can then find it, see it, get excited about it, and explore more. To me, that's a little bit of sort of the thing, other than the ones and zeros of it becoming a thing in whatever the area it is. Because once that happens, it will pop up on our radar for most people. But until then, I think it's on you guys to sort of help create the thing in a way that is snackable for the rest of us.
Yeah. The one thing I'll add on packaging is don't just add people to your project, add people who will move it forward and are passionate about it. So it doesn't matter if they're an actor, director, writer, you need to find someone who loves it as much as you do, or else it just becomes something else on their slate that they brag about at dinner parties. So that is really key, and we learned that early on. We attached some big name people who really wasn't gonna be their thing, and so knowing who you're packaging with is really, really important. On that note, we do have to wrap up this lovely discussion. I want to thank our panelists. If you could give them a nice round of applause.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Aron Levitz, thank him for double duty. Remember, $100 to me, and I will give you his email address.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the festival.